Good afternoon, nature lovers. This is Kelly Wenzel, Project Director for Urban Education Outreach with New Jersey Audubon. And a little different activity today. I was outside yesterday weeding my garden and came across an area in my driveway that I like to call no man's land. It's kind of an area between my fence and where the asphalt starts. That there's nothing planted there right now. And I thought of a great activity that I do a lot with families and children at libraries and after school programs that I thought you all could do at home. The supplies are simple. You should be able to get them at a home store or even a garden center now that they are open. Basically, all you need is the cheapest clay cat litter you can find. If it has no scent, that's better. If it's just plain old cheap, ShopRite cat litter, compost or really nice soil, something like that. You can get smaller bags from the home store, and wildflower seed. And at the end, I will give you a list of great places to find seed and what seeds you should be looking for that are native. So let's get started making our seed balls. So first I'm going to show you my no man's land here. It's you can kind of see the asphalt ends. There's like this weird space, lots of weeds, and then I have my fence, the basketball hoop down there. So this area is just all weedy all the time, so why not have some wildflowers growing here in the spring? Thought that would be fun. So that's my spot. It doesn't have to be big. You could certainly do this in a pot, or in cities, I've even thrown them into vacant lots. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So let's look at our ingredients now. Okay, so it's a nice day, so I'm going to sit in my patio in the shade, and I have a Chinese food takeout container. I have some leftover compost from a program that I had, but again, you could use topsoil. Compost is best. Try to get something without, fertilizer in it. That's best to do, which they have at home stores. And this is a seed packet mix that I found at the office before I left. Here's a seed packet mix. Now this is a lot of seed because I was going to do it with a lot of kids, but there are some great wildflower mixtures out there, and like I said, I'm going to give you a list of seeds to look for at the end of this, because we want to stay with native seeds. So we want to plant things that will help our wildlife here in New Jersey, that won't spread and grow on top of anything else, outcompete anything else. So we always want to try to plant native seeds wherever possible. They help our pollinators. So I think in a couple of videos following this one, we'll talk about pollinators and we'll talk about native plants a little bit more, but for today it's all about seed balls. So we've got our compost, our seed, and then here is my leftover cat litter. Unfortunately, I don't have a cat. This is literally just gray clay. That's all it is. And you'll also need some water. So I have a spray bottle. You don't have to be that fancy, but just a little bit of water at a time. I like to use a cup. I got a spoon, a wet paper towel, just to get all set up. Okay, so I dumped out my seed, and now you're probably saying to yourself, Miss Kelly, why don't you just throw the seed out into that little spot, rake it in a little bit, and call it a day? Well, why do you think? Who is going to come and eat all of my seed? I hear some in the background every once in a while. Birds, squirrels, chipmunks, they're all going to come and eat your seed up. So seed balls are a way of protecting that seed so that it has a chance to germinate before a bird or squirrel or somebody else eats it. It's actually a very ancient practice. They've been using it in Africa for thousands of years to reseed prairies and grasslands, and even grow vegetables in some parts. So a fun thing to do before you start adding anything else to your seed mix is kind of looking at your seed. Let's see how close I can get here. And looking how many different kinds of seed you can find. You got that one there, and I don't know what they all are. I know some of them are echinacea seed. Got these flat ones, you got triangular shaped ones. This one's like very traditional seed shape, it's round. So if you have the time, and this is a great activity for younger kids to get a pair of tweezers or toothpick and actually have them sort out the seeds that they find and make little piles of seeds. So I won't take you through that because I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but there's a lot of different kinds of flowers in here. I'm very excited. Okay, so in my Chinese food container, I'm just gonna use this little cup here for measuring. So it's about proportion. So we don't necessarily need to measure everything out exactly, although that would be a great lesson to add if you want to incorporate measurement into your activity, but it's really about proportion. So in our seed balls, we're actually going to use mostly clay. So have any of you ever played with clay? Not Play-Doh, like real clay. What happens when it gets wet? What do we make with clay? We make pottery, right? It makes things hard. So this is dried clay, so I'm just going to pour that right into my pan, and I used almost a full cup of that clay. So now I'm going to go in here into my soil bag, and it's kind of lumpy, so we're going to break that up in a second. But I'm going to add maybe a little more than half of my cup with my compost. Now, normally you'd want it to be dry, everything to be dry going in. This is moist, it's not going to mess anything up, it'll be fine. So you dump that in, and as you can see, it's kind of lumpy. So I'm going to go ahead and break up those lumps with my fingers. When you're doing this, if you notice that there's little like sticks and stuff in there, which there sometimes is, or stones. Ooh, this one's got a pebble in here. You can, I'm outside, it's a stone, I'm just going to throw it over there. If you're inside, of course, don't just throw stones in your living room or in your kitchen, but just try to break up the lumps and maybe mix it into that clay a little bit. So you're making kind of a nice, even mixture. How does it feel? How's the clay feel on your fingers? We're gonna, when we wet it, we're gonna do that again. Does it smell funny? Does your compost smell? Sometimes compost smells. Let's see. Mine doesn't. It kind of just smells like cat litter. So I think I got most of the lumps out. And now I'm going to take my seed mix that we used before, and I'm going to put half of a half, so about 1/4 of this tiny little cup filled with my seed mixture. Okay, so I have about 1/4 of a cup of my seed mixture. I'm going to pour that right in there, and just like that, I'm going to mix it up. Okay, so here's what my pan looks like. We've got the clay, the soil, and the seeds all nice and evenly mixed, right? Just like Grandma's meatball mix. Now, I have a squirt bottle. The top is deciding not to work, so I'm just going to slowly pour in some water. Not a lot. Start with a little bit. Now, you could use an old spoon. I like to use my hands even when I cook because I can feel it more. And you just kind of stir it around, and what's it going to turn into? It's going to kind of turn into mud, right? So let me continue to stir this. Okay, so I've mixed and mixed my seed ball mixture, and you want it to kind of be hard. You don't want it to really be soupy. And you see how I got all of the seed and clay and soil in there? So you want it to stay together. You don't want it to fall apart. It should feel kind of sticky. Okay? And basically all you're going to do, now I'm going to do this with one hand, is you're going to break off little pieces. You don't want your seed balls to be too big because they won't work as well. So, you know, what's that, like the size of a quarter? So you just want to break them off. They don't have to be perfect balls. They're not Grandma's meatballs. It's okay. They can be a little messy. And you're just going to keep making these into tiny little balls. So just keep going, making all of those seed balls. That one's a little big. Okay, here are my last two. And I actually came out even. I will admit I love to cook, so I can kind of gauge how much stuff I have, and I can make my meatballs. So mine, I made 9 pretty evenly spaced balls. So now what you're going to do, this is the hard part. You actually need to let them sit out in their little tray, nice and spaced apart, and let them dry out for a couple days. I know, it's a hard thing to do, but the reason you let them dry out is because if it's still wet like this, when you put them out, the birds and other animals are going to be able to get right at the seed again. And sometimes because they're moist, they'll actually be attracted to it. So you want to let them get nice and dry. And when your seed balls dry out, they're going to look like this. Okay, and see how dry they are? They're like rocks. Okay, so that's how you want them to be. See how hard they are? Now, what happens with this hard ball is they kind of sit out there. Nobody can peck at them, but especially this time of year, this is late March, early April, probably up until Mother's Day, mid-May. You throw these out, it'll rain, it slowly gets warmer, and with the rain, the clay and everything melts, and again, gives time for your seeds to germinate before any of the birds can get them. So I'm going to take my dried seed balls, because I don't want to throw the wet ones out, and I'm going to show you how to toss your seed balls, which is really kind of self-explanatory. So again, here I am right outside my fence in no man's land. And so you could be strategic. You could take your seed balls in your hand and you could place them and say, I'm going to place them so many inches apart. It doesn't really matter because they're wildflowers, so they're just going to pop up. So you could certainly do that. Like I said, I work in urban neighborhoods a lot, and there are many, many vacant lots that sometimes just don't look very nice, and we literally throw them over fences, and they land where they land, and in the springtime, flowers will come up. Just be mindful of where you're throwing them, though, and remember where you toss them. Or you could toss them in a weird corner and if you have a yard, or like I said, you could put them in a flower pot. Anywhere where they're going to get constant watering. They need to be outside. These are not indoor plants. And a good amount of sunlight. Most of these flowers that we're going to put on here at the end need sunlight. So there's some shade mixes, but you know, flowers, you're trying to attract bees and butterflies, things like that. You're going to want them to be in a sunny spot. So just before we go, again, I hope you guys enjoyed making seed balls with me. Just to recap, easy ingredients, 1 part of simple clay cat litter, half of that in compost or really good soil, and then 1/4 of it with wildflower seed mix, or all one kind of wildflower. You could do like just sunflowers, that would be fine too. A little bit of water, ball them up, let them dry out, and toss them wherever you want. So I hope you had fun making seed balls with me today. It's one of my most favorite activities in the world to do. And if you have questions or comments, please join us on Facebook or Instagram and post your questions. And in a few months, show us your gardens that sprout from this whole thing. Again, this is Kelly Wenzel, New Jersey Audubon Project Director for Urban Education Outreach. Have a great day.